Let's Talk About Pain, a podcast from the Quebec Pain Research Network. In each episode, we discuss the latest advances in pain research with guests from across Quebec in the health and research communities. Enjoy your listening.
Hello, this episode was originally produced by Carmen Edith Belei Rodriguez, a psychoeducator with a PhD in health science research who is now undergoing her second postdoctoral fellowship with Dr. Luana Colloca at the University of Maryland. Her research interests include pediatric pain, the placebo and nocebo effects, as well as ADHD, attention, and inhibition. But the episode's animation is provided by me, Don Daniel Okai, a PhD graduate from McGill University from Montreal, and now a postdoctoral fellow at the Boston Children's Hospital. For this episode, we'll be discussing the placebo and nocebo effects. Does it ring any bell? Do you know what it is? Are you sure? Have you ever had a placebo or nocebo effect? If you answered no to this last question, chances are you might be wrong. Whatever your answer, if you want to know why, this episode contains lots of interesting information on the subject, including the impact of our expectations, thoughts, and many other personal or life aspects on pain. To introduce you to the concepts of the placebo and nocebo effects, what better way than to ask an expert? Carmen had the pleasure of interviewing none other than Dr. Serge Marchand, scientific director of a research company and associate professor at the University of Sherbrooke. He is a pioneer in research on the physiological mechanisms of pain modulation and a renowned expert on the placebo and nocebo effects. He is a leader in the field and has played a very important role in developing it in Quebec, as well as being an internationally renowned researcher. We are fortunate to have access here to his invaluable knowledge and expertise. Here's a summary of the discussion. Dr. Serge Marchand provided an introduction to the placebo effect. It is often described as an inert treatment, eliciting a favorable response from individuals. In the scenario where someone experiences a headache and then consumes a sugar tablet, which reduces the pain, the pill would be the placebo, and the phenomenon of the reduction in pain, despite the absence of any active therapeutic ingredient, is commonly referred to as the placebo effect. If we could give the placebo effect another name, it may be referred to as individual efficacy. If I were to experience a placebo effect, it would manifest as physiological responses that have been stimulated, resulting in a favorable impact on my body. Physiological changes have been documented in numerous studies that look at the brain and other bodily functions with the placebo effect. There are many strategies to take advantage of the placebo effect with our brain. For example, when taking medication, we can tell ourselves that it will work, it will help me, and it will have an effect. The human brain possesses a remarkable capacity for forming associations and acquiring knowledge based on anticipated outcomes. This phenomenon is commonly referred to as conditioning. After undergoing a therapeutic intervention, such as taking medication, our bodies is capable of eliciting the release of identical molecules when a placebo is administered. This behavior has been documented in numerous research across various situations. It is important to note that a contrary impact also exists. If an individual holds the belief that a medication will not work or anticipates experiencing side effects, there exists a potential for the activation of additional cerebral regions that may, regrettably, impede the drug's therapeutic effectiveness or worsen the side effects. This is called the nocebo effect. Dr. Marchand proposes adopting a positive perspective in the face of potential side effects, exemplified by the statement, well, it is possible that the side effects indicate that the treatment is working. By doing so, we increase the likelihood of the drug's efficacy. Clinicians must also recognize that they are unable to abstain from generating a placebo or nocebo effect. Every time we interact with someone, we influence their expectations. We do this every day, unconsciously. So if we are doing it, why not reinforce it for clinicians? This doesn't mean lying, but rather employing an appropriate intervention and selecting our words properly. For instance, saying, "I understand your specific case and believe that the treatment I am recommending is optimal for your circumstances. It is highly probable that this treatment will effectively alleviate your pain and improve your health conditions." The objective here is to positively reinforce while being realistic. The identification of a balance is crucial in this context. It is crucial to consider the presence of a placebo and nocebo effect, emphasizing the preference for inducing a placebo response rather than a nocebo response. Carmen also had the chance to interview Dr. Lene Vase, professor in the Department of Psychology and Behavioral Sciences at the University of Aarhus in Denmark, and director of the Psychology and Neuroscience Placebo and Nocebo Research Laboratory. Dr. Vase studies the psychological and neurobiological mechanisms underlying placebo and nocebo effects in the central nervous system disorders such as pain, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's disease. She has developed multiple original placebo controls to adequately test the efficacy of pharmacological and non-pharmacological treatments such as surgery, deep brain stimulation, and music. Carmen had the opportunity to chat with her at the end of a conference session on the theme of placebo and nocebo effects at the World Congress of Pain. The take-home messages from this for patients is that it is important to keep in mind that if you find yourself in a situation where you don't like your relationship with your healthcare professional, or you're not comfortable with it, or you don't like your treatment, or you're afraid of having significant side effects, it's important to take it seriously and address as soon as possible, and reconsider your options. For clinicians, taking the time to discuss what's important to the patient can really make all the difference. This allows the conversation to be open and address past experiences and hopefully reduce negative expectations and fear. After this very interesting interview, Carmen had the chance to chat with a researcher who also presented during the same thematic session on placebo and nocebo, Dr. Luana Colloca, a professor at the University of Maryland, Baltimore, and plays an important role in several international networks on pain and placebo. Dr. Colloca is an internationally renowned researcher with a medical degree, a PhD in neuroscience, and a master's degree in bioethics. Here's the interview between Carmen and Luana.
Dr. Packard said something about the anticipation activation in the brain, which was similar when we had pain. And I was wondering, what do you think? Does that cause a problem for the studies that evaluate the pain using the activate tissues in the brain, if anticipation actually activates the same part of the brain without the pain?
Dr. Edith, very good question. There is literature suggesting that imagery, but also recalling memories about pain, as well as observing someone in pain, can activate similar circuits in the brain. That means pain is not merely related to the nociceptive stimulations. So people who are in pain can still perceive pain by memories, by comparison with peers, and also emotional pain. So that is why it is very important when we talk about pain to differentiate pain unpleasantness, pain intensity, but also the complexity of pain experience per se, whereby merely observing someone in pain make us feel pain, or going through a breakout make us feel pain, devastating pain, or a person who died in our family. So there are situations where we experience very strong pain and the brain responds as if we are being injured. So that is fascinating that while we differentiate between body injuries, our brain doesn't do so.
Wow, interesting. So activating the pain only by anticipation and the memory, could it be a sort of conditioning?
Exactly, but also a sort of safety mechanism. I spoke a lot about nocebo, and how nocebo, and that nocebo for those who are listening to us, are worsening of symptoms. So nocebo hyperalgesia is an increase of the pain experience, while per se we are undergoing a certain level of pain that should not hurt. So we call this nocebo hyperalgesia, and we know that nocebo can be related to an anticipation of the upcoming painful stimulation or pain experience. So the fact that our brain is so strong in predicting, anticipating a painful experience help us somehow to be in a safe spot. This safe spot can become a resource when we are able to bench back and balance our behaviors and defensive mechanism, but can be also a mechanism that trigger catastrophizing, fear of pain, and chronicity of pain, along with all this suffering that make pain, a very difficult disease to treat.
Thank you. So on the same subject, what would you say to the patients that could be listening? What could they do to minimize the nocebo effect they might experience?
Definitely, it is important to have the right mindset. And I'm not ashamed to share that I'm a chronic pain patient. I was diagnosed as consequence of another disease, and I try to use all my knowledge on placebo to focus on always positive aspects of pain. Pain is terrible, but it's not something we die for unless there are situations where people can't tolerate pain anymore. So there are definitely treatments, pharmacological, not pharmacological, but most important, our mindset is so important. If we expect to zero out our pain, we will be frustrated because sometimes it's not possible. But if we understand how to cope and somehow live with the pain, that help us to find inside us resources that help us to navigate this better. Today I was walking to this conference and I was thinking many other ISP conference, and usually I was nervous, or when I was 10 years younger. And today, with my chronic pain, that fortunately is a good day, I didn't feel this, and I thought, well, somehow we can be experiencing chronic pain, but if we learn how our body reacts, sleeping, do not eat certain things, minimize trigger for pain, that can help every patient in pain to find a spot that gives us a sense of safety. It is very important to have a life that is balanced in terms of emotions, rewards, do things that you love, and be happy, because pain will not kill us. Rather, we can live with pain and smile and somehow find the resources that are available outside us, treatments, but also very much inside us.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a very rich answer with the knowledge and the personal experience. So thank you very much. It's a very, very complete answer.
Thank you. My pleasure. And I hope for those who hear so that they truly find the best attitude towards pain. That is not necessarily taking a pill, but it's much more than that. It's really an adjustment in terms of life balance, and there is a possibility to do that well.
Do you think we can become placebo responders?
Being placebo responders is a great resource.
Yes.
Because we can switch our attention to things that help us to feel that we are under control, and so it's nothing terrible, it's just pain. I used to say that, and people look at me, I don't see that you are in pain. I say, I'm glad that you don't see. But it's something that is inside us, but yet manageable. And that is what we have to understand, that if we enter this mindset of scoring pain every day, of taking a pill every day, the pain becomes somehow overwhelming. That can create a circus of negative thoughts that can be very dangerous. On the other side, we can, understand how and things that make us feel good, and that help. The more you add in terms of good things to your life, things that you're passionate about, treatment that can mitigate the pain, diet that is not triggering pain, and most important, exercise and sleeping, that it's a cocktail of good things that you can add behind any pills.
Thank you.
Yes.
And as a physician, if you had to be careful about a few things for your patients. What would be like the most important things?
We have definitely many treatments for pain, and I always suggest to add to any pharmacological treatment the non-pharmacological treatment from, every person responds differently, but there are an array from exercise, mindfulness, stress reduction, to psychotherapy, to, new rewarding activities. But most important, I think, interaction, and do not isolate yourself. Social connections are so powerful. And so if you decide to do sport, join a team. If you decide to cook, launch a cooking course together with your friends, so that together with the activity, that is the physical activity, the mental activity, you can also have this support that comes from people you care for, friends and colleagues and so on. Create a network of people around you.
Do you want to say hi in French to the Quebec people?
Bonjour, c'est Luana Colloca. Je vous salue from Toronto and the World Conference for Pain.
Such a rich conversation between the two. A take-home message from their conversation for the people listening: it sincerely makes a difference to try to find the best possible attitude towards pain, which doesn't stop at taking a pill. It's much more than that, including integrating adjustments adapted to oneself to achieve a balanced life. During the World Congress of Pain, Carmen was unfortunately unable to attend the symposium on the placebo and nocebo effect. However, she did interview someone who was able to attend and who was very kind enough to share a summary with her. So Carmen chatted with Małgorzata Starzec-Proserpio, who is a Polish physiotherapist and currently a postdoctoral fellow in Lene Vase's laboratory at the University of Sherbrooke. Her clinical research interests include pelvic pain and pelvic floor muscle dysfunction. Here, she also works clinically with women suffering from pelvic pain, pelvic floor dysfunction, and sexuality. In Poland, she works in a women's health hospital and a sexology clinic. Let's listen to their conversation.
Hi, Gosha. How are you?
How are you? Fine, I'm fine. How are you?
Very good. Thank you to be here today. So you spent an entire day listening on different talks about placebo and nocebo effects. How do you want to start? Do you want to go by conference? Do you want to share with us what impressed you most, the key aspect you remember?
Yeah, cool. I think I will just go for the key aspects. The conference was very interesting, especially for me, who is a clinician and researcher, not really so deep in the placebo research, so it was everything new for me. So basically, this 6 symposium go through very in-depth knowledge. We dive very, very deep into the basic mechanism of placebo in the very almost cellular level. So we went very deep into brain function and how the placebo and nocebo effect may be explained through various brain mechanisms. So that was mainly the first part of the 6 symposium. Then we were trying to determine who is the best placebo responder, and that actually it's very, very difficult research question, as there are so many various factors that are influencing who will be the placebo responder. And among them, a very important cultural differences. So what was very new to me is that white people are stronger placebo responders than, for example, Black Afro-Americans. Then there was also a very interesting information that also the person, the clinician, and his race is also important, because if he match our race, then it is plausible that the placebo effect will be stronger as well.
Oh, wow. So that is true for all cultures or most of cultures?
Yeah, that is true for most of the cultures. However, that's what they suspect. However, the study that they presented was about white and Black Afro-American people. So that was very, very interesting. Another thing that was very interesting for me is the thing how the way we inform the research participant may influence the placebo or nocebo response. So that is very crucial when we do any research study, how we inform our participants, because that can have a great influence on the results. And what was very interesting for me also to hear, the main three factors or group of factors that are responsible for the placebo response, that are expectations, emotions, and a very basic thing, which is genetics. So that was also
really?
very interesting.
And what did they say about genetics?
But there were some genetic factors that may kind of predispose us. But what was interesting, there's not a certain gene that will make you more placebo responder. So that is not so clear for the other studies. With the placebo, it's very difficult to determine by genes that this person will be placebo responder. There may be some influences, but from what I understood from the sixth symposium, we don't have the exact pattern when it comes to genetics.
And do you remember what they said about emotions?
So emotions are a very intrinsic factor that will influence how people will reply to the treatment, and if they will be susceptible for the placebo effect. What was interesting, it's difficult again to put a certain pattern, because a person may be responder for in one circumstances or in one occasion, but when some of the conditions will change, he may not be a placebo responder anymore. So it was very difficult to draw a recipe of a placebo responder, because a person may be a placebo responder in one conditions, but not necessarily in others. Or he may respond to one kind of a placebo, but not to another kind of a placebo. And then another topic that emerged during the sixth symposium was nocebo. And what was very interesting for me as a clinician is that nocebo is much easier induced than placebo effect. And again, in contrary to placebo, this may be resistant to extinction, and it may be stable over time. So for us as a clinicians, this is a very important knowledge, because we sometimes not on purpose may induce this nocebo effect, and unfortunately it may have a long-lasting effects to our patients. And again, for the nocebo response, what were the most important factors was social learning, classical conditioning, and verbal suggestions. So again, what we talk and what we speak with our patients, but also the social learning. So what we put out in the social media, Instagram, this also creates a big responsibility, because it may create a nocebo response.
Oh, wow. So we have the TV and all, they have a huge responsibility of the effect on the population. So if we do a parallel with the COVID, where we had a lot of fear messages and everything, do you think it played a role? Do you think it fits in that theory?
Yeah, I think so. The only thing I missed the most from the sixth symposium were more clinical implications, because it was very research-based symposium, but me and some other people, we missed some more clinical aspects of the issue. But hopefully that will be developed in some future researchers, or by some future researchers, or in the future placebo symposium.
What a great conversation and summary from Małgorzata. So apparently, it's easier to create a nocebo effect in someone than a placebo effect. Remember, a nocebo effect is an undesirable effect experience following an inactive treatment or an amplified effect. The nocebo effect can become more stable and resistant over time. It's very important to keep this information in mind, because as healthcare professionals, we can unintentionally induce a nocebo effect in our patients or service users. And this can have a significant long-term negative consequences that are less likely to disappear on their own or over time. In terms of who responds most to the nocebo effect, the characteristics that have the greatest impact are social learning, classical conditioning, and verbal suggestion. So yes, what you can say to a patient can create a nocebo effect, but so can what you broadcast on social networks, television, or radio. Well, I hope this overview has succeeded in captivating you and arousing your interest in a subject that has fascinated Carmen for many years. Stay tuned for future episodes, and above all, share the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Let's Talk About Pain. Don't hesitate to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and to share the podcast with your friends. For more information, visit our website at qprn.ca or our YouTube channel by searching Quebec Pain Research Network. See you next time.